right, Slick Talkers, the secret is out. We have the COO of STR Secrets here, Mike Riley, to join us on the podcast. And if you know STR Secrets or they sound familiar to you, Mike Sjogren, who is in the podcast network Hospitality FM with us with his podcast, the STR Secrets podcast, he has pretty much brought in an integrator. And what does an integrator do? We're going to talk about that in this episode. You've heard me talk about it multiple times with Steve Trover, Fawad Bazzi, and many others. But Mike Riley, welcome to the podcast, my friend. I'm super excited to have you on I don't think we've really got to chat much outside of, a hi and bye at the conferences. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Been listening to you and obviously following you for a while. So it's going to be good to hang out for a bit and chat.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear your story. But before we do, anything I could do to improve the podcast from a listener experience? Put you in the hot seat for a sec.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I really like all the updates and all the guests that you have. I think what we're trying to do with STR Secrets podcast is just do more consistent updates on the data. I'm a data nerd. So, having Jamie on and that sort of thing is good too. I know you got a good cadence there as well. So, yeah. No, I think that's it. Just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, sweet. Awesome. Jamie Lane's the man. Love AirDNA and the team over there. So thank you for them for allowing him to spend some time with us on Good Morning Hospitality and the other shows that we got him involved in. So really appreciate it. But all right, Mike, your story, pretty interesting. I do love the good leave my W-2, go full-time into entrepreneurship, running properties, building a team. So where does it all start for you?
Yeah, I think I like to look back at some certain points in life that were kind of tipping points, and one the first one really for me that I found was I was a junior in college and I played tennis at Penn State, and I thought my whole life as a kid I was going to be a professional tennis player, and so I worked my whole life to be a professional tennis player. Up until that point. And I got diagnosed with kidney disease in my junior year of college. And so I was out for about 9 months, just sitting on the couch. I couldn't do anything. And so that got me thinking of all right, what happens if, this happens again in 5 years, 10 years, 1 year? And so I started thinking too, what do I do? What do I do for money? What do I do for work? And that's when I started networking with a lot of people that were, had the nice corporate jobs. And so I listened to their advice and graduated. I beat the kidney disease. So everything was good there. I got my kidney removed. So I only have one now, but I'm all healthy and everything. And just got a nice corporate right out of college in Raleigh, North Carolina, working for a massive tech company. And started working up the corporate ladder and, was successful doing that. I maxed out my 401k. I did all the things they told you to do, right? Show up early, late, work during your lunches, that sort of thing. And then in 2019, so I was in it for 4 years, graduating 15. In 2019, I did 104 nights in a hotel. And I was in sales, so I was just trying to be the best and just beat everybody on my team and sell the most and just be the top performer. I was very competitive, still am. And that 104 nights in the hotel just crushed me. That whole year was just exhausting. And then COVID happened in early 2020. And that's when I really had that realization of what am I doing? I'm working for somebody else, living out their dream. And now the world just shut down. I got to reassess and think about what's going on. And that's when I met Mike Sjogren and got into short-term rentals.
Very interesting. And I know there's a lot we can unpack. So I'm curious, what part of that 104 nights in the hotels really killed you? What was it? The consistent travel? Were you away? Did you have your wife and kids at the time or kids?
Yeah.
Kind of walk me through your life and that point of your, that moment in time.
I had just moved to Nashville, Tennessee. So I was living in Nashville at the time. And my wife, my now wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, decided to move out there as well. She luckily got a similar job. She was in tech as well, in tech sales. And, it wasn't as much the nights in the hotels. A lot of times she was able to come with me because we were doing kind of the same role, but it was more just the going to those meetings every single day. And then we usually had to take the clients out to dinner too. And then, there's just nonstop drinking all the time. Like that was just kind of the culture. And at a certain point as well, my boss, is very, very successful in the tech space and very good dude, but he wanted to stay out late and come on and visit me all the time. And he was very helpful for me, but it just wasn't the lifestyle I was looking for. And it just wasn't really healthy for me. And I had to make a change. And I got surrounded by some good people that helped me make that change.
All right, Slick Talkers. So I hope you're enjoying this episode with Mike Riley. But before we continue on and geek out about the things that we get to further down the episode, which you don't want to miss, talking about Airbnb and kind of our predictions and hot takes around him, I have to tell you about our partners at Minute. And I don't know if you know this, but recently Airbnb announced the banning of indoor camera usage on your properties at all times. Officially, April 30th is happening, which is a little weird. You would think that indoor cameras not allowed. If you're using indoor cameras, get rid of that crap. That's a little creepy, but I will say the solution is Minute. Minute is partnered with Airbnb directly. So when you use a Minute device, it's privacy safe. So there's no recordings, there's no video cameras. It's literally just measuring decibel levels of your guests occupying the home. It can measure not only audio levels, but it can detect cigarette smoke or other smoking products that should not be in the home. They have an outdoor and indoor sensor. So if you have an outdoor sensor, maybe you have a beautiful backyard with amenities and fire pit and all these things, and you have neighbors, you want to be respectful, it can actually detect when a car is driving by, if a leaf or, whatever is falling, right? Like it won't report on anything that's not actual party noise. It's no false positives, basically what I'm trying to tell you. And many other features like occupancy. If there's too many devices connected to the Wi-Fi, you get the point. Get rid of those indoor cameras, get Minute inside your vacation homes. Make sure you use them and let them know that Will sent you from Slick Talk. You get 2 months free. Plus, if you have over 10 properties, you get a killer deal with them. So let them know, get rid of those indoors. Back to the episode with Mike Riley. I hope you guys are enjoying the episode. That's really good. And I love the kind of correlation between your and Mike Sjogren's story in the sense of working for someone else, trading time for money is what Mike always says, right? When Caden got sick, and you kind of had the similar moment with your kidney disease, and thankfully, like that's all on both parties, Mike Sjogren and you, all as well. And I think it's interesting how there's always that moment where I think that switch changes, right? Where working corporate, doing the thing that everyone tells you to do, and it's like a really great idea, and you're going to make money and do this and be successful, really does shift gears when it affects your health or your finances or just even your relationships. And so I would love to know from your point of view, what benefits or pros from the corporate world and the tech side did you actually take in bringing into either STR Secrets or just within your own portfolio of short-term rentals?
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a great question. There's so many good things. So I worked for 3 companies, the first tech company, and then I worked for a bigger tech company, and then I worked for Google, which is like the biggest, tech company. I worked for them.
The biggest, literally.
Yeah, from 2020 until 2022. And just so many great lessons. I mean, in every single department of the business. So, what I do now with STR Secrets is, so I'm the integrator, right? And I kind of oversee every single department that we have. When I was working in the tech world, I was in sales. However, I still touched every department, right? I had to make relationships with the finance department, with the accounting department, with the marketing department, with the channel department. And so learning those lessons in the corporate world, really on somebody else's dime. But I was making them a lot more money than they were paying me, right? But at the end of the day, I had another realization of like, they could fire me at any time for any singular reason. So I'm just going to learn as much as I can, attach myself to people that are successful. And so just learning the overall structure of, all right, how do I build a team? How do I build a book of business? How do I take the 80-20 rule and really maximize the time in the corporate world? And so it was just a lot of people are like, I don't want to go corporate. I don't want to go corporate. I'm like, get a good job that you can go and make $250 a year and then invest in real estate and see if you like it.
Seriously. No, I always tell people, like, honestly, ride that train as long as you can, especially like you said, learning on someone else's dime. If you can learn how to manage a team, build a schedule, create, systems and processes, as much as a loosey-goosey system process guy I am as a founder, I'm not the most like dot every T, dot every I, cross every T. But like, I think there's so much power in the ability to learn on that company's dollar, right? Especially if you mess up. If you mess up, guess what? Yeah, you can get fired, but most likely you're going to get a little slap on the wrist and learn from the mistake and continue to move on. So versus like you mess up in your own business, who knows? You could set stuff on fire. So, it's very interesting. I would love to know, because like my last day as a W-2 employee was December 27th, 2019. And right before COVID. And I was kind of like, I had this mindset in the beginning of COVID when I lost all my current revenue and guests and all these things, right? I was like, well, I just took this risk to go into business for myself and I lost everything. 3 months in, my mom would be so proud. But in the sense of like, I would have been furloughed or let go anyways. Like there's no pro of like, oh, I should have stayed longer or I should have done this. So walk me through your first day. W-2, last job is at Google, stayed through 2022. What was the first day of freedom, basically, for you? Was it different?
I wouldn't say it was too much different. I definitely spent, I can't even remember that day, to be honest. I know I spent more time. I had a 6-month-old. So no.
Makes sense why you don't remember. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's true too. So she had just started sleeping through the night. So I probably slept that day. I just took it easy. But no, it was June 2022. And it is different going from like, your schedule's kind of made for you when you're at the W-2 in sales. It's a little bit different. Like you kind of got to go hunt and go make your own schedule. But really, once we made that transition full time into like our business, I was doing some coaching with Mike on the side, but really my main focus was, all right, we hit that goal. Now let's go set bigger goals. And that honestly, that's probably what I did that week, is just like, all right, what's now what's on the vision board? And that's a weird thing. It's just like reassessing. All right, I just hit this big goal. Now what do I do? I don't have this huge nest egg, but I need to go like grow this business.
Well, it's very interesting too, because a lot of people probably listening to this episode right now are like, oh, okay, so like just 2022, he just ups and leaves Google and starts this business and never went back. You were, during that time, you were building your own portfolio, correct? Like you were buying and investing in real estate, like getting your management up and running. Like you're walking through how are you balancing that? Especially, I know sales, like you said, you kind of got to go you eat what you kill, right? You gotta go hunt. So it's not like you can just kind of dilly-dally and work on your side hustle while you're getting paid, $250K from Google every year. You gotta perform. So walk me through balancing the two during that time.
Yeah, being very, very, very efficient. And also, so that's the first thing. And I can walk through some tools on that. But the second thing is I wrote down my goal every single day prior to leaving Google. I knew I was going to leave Google. I had made that decision. And I think that's a lot of people like kind of sit in this wishy-washy. I'd like to leave my W-2. I'd like to get a new job. I'd like to invest in real estate. Once you make that decision and you write it down, and especially if you write it down every day and you connect with why you want to hit that goal, then you just hit things way faster. So I wrote down the goal. I'm so happy and grateful now. It's September 15th, 2022, which is my daughter's first birthday. And I've reached 20K a month in net cash flow from my real estate business. And now I'm a full-time entrepreneur. So I wrote that down every day, every day in 2021. And because that's when I set that goal. It's like 2021, I'm doing it. I just found out we were pregnant with Palmer. And so when you have that clarity and you know that that's happened, you start making decisions based on knowing that. And so, when I was working with the W-2, when I was at Google, I was focused on that. I needed more money to go fund my real estate. And so I was on the hunt I was hustling. I needed to go make more. So like once I sold somebody, I would just take that money and go invest in real estate. And then also, the first year we bought 3 properties. And then the second year, so in 2020, we bought 3. And then 2021, we bought 1 and we coasted 10. So we added 11 units in 2021 and had Palmer, our firstborn. And so right before she was born, Mike was kicking me to hire my first assistant. And he was like, dude, you need to hire. He was finally just like, all right, I'm not going to ask you anymore. You're hiring somebody now. And I did that in August. Palmer was born in September. And honestly, like that first hire was the best investment. I've invested in some really nice properties, but he was able to give me my time back, and also he's still with me, almost 3 years later, growing our business and running 95% of it. So that if you can find somebody that can, take on a lot of the tasks that aren't worth your time. When I say worth your time, I mean, my time was, if I wanted to be at $20K a month and only work 4 hours a week, and you kind of do the math on that, that's 16 hours a month. So 20K a month, 16 hours a month, that's a pretty high hourly rate. So I'm like, anything below that, I'm just going to pay somebody to do. That was kind of my methodology of how I can be more efficient and juggle both. And then my wife, was a huge help as well. I need to give her a massive shout out because she was a very integral piece of growing this business. She ran the communications for a while. She set up and designed all of our properties too. And honestly, the glue for all of it when you're growing.
So say shout out to all the wives who just make shit happen for all their husbands who are starting companies and for them who I know a lot of wives actually eventually start their own thing as well. So super shout out to all of them, all the lovely ladies. I'm very curious, Mike, as you're sharing this story, I know a lot of founders struggle with the opportunity, like they get the business up and running. They're getting, whether it's cash from management properties, their own real estate, services, things that they provide, right? They get the money in and they're like, okay, like I have a real business here. What advice do you have for the founders who are struggling to justify spending money on an employee to come in and help rather than like paying themselves? Because I know a lot of founders really have a long time so they can actually give themselves either any type of owner payouts or any type of consistent salary in the sense of, in lack of a better term, salary. Because at the end of the day, like you got bills to pay too, right? You just had a kid, you're growing a family. How do you get to that point to justify spending for someone else to join rather than paying yourself a natural income?
Great question. First thing I see so often, and I've coached over 600 people in the last 2 years. I see too often people have business partners when they're starting this that don't need it. Like they'll say, hey, I'm doing this business with my friend, or I'm doing this business with my cousin, or doing it with my, whoever. And it's like, all right, why? What are your roles, responsibilities? What do you bring to the table? What do you not bring to the table? Because what happens is when you're growing this business, then you guys split everything 50-50. And then you got to split the decisions 50-50 as well. So really think about, all right, what's your goal for this business? Yeah, it would be nice to like grow a business with your friend or your, like somebody else, your brother or whatnot. But get very clear on like why you're doing this. That's the first thing. And very common mistake I see all too often because it's just, you got to double everything. But if you can use simple math, and that's all getting wealthy is just applying simple math to complex situations. And
you make it sound so easy, Mike.
Well, if you just that same scenario, if you have a goal to hit 20K a month and you want to work 4 hours a week, that's so 20,000 divided by 16 hours is $12.50 an hour. So anything less than that, until you hit that goal, you should be paying somebody else to do. Because that's what your time is worth. Your time is more focused on bigger ticket, bigger item things, more visionary things. And yeah, you're going to have to like learn the nuts and bolts as you're starting. But when you have that goal and you're like, all right, you're at a certain point, you just need to reinvest back into the business so that you can continue to grow. And there's really stair steps of success in any business. And I think in short-term rentals and what we teach is very, very linear. It's like once you get your first 5 properties, then it's like, all right, it's time to hire somebody. Then you can add another 5, and then you can add another 10. And you have to have your tech and your systems down first. But it's really until if you do it all yourself, it's just another job, right? But if you have somebody who can come in and step in and do the things that you don't want to do, the things that drain you energy, then you should pay them for that. And I've got 3 people on my team. I've got a personal assistant as well that does a lot of my email and, grocery ordering and helps with family stuff too, just because it can be a lot. So I'm really bought into the Tim Ferriss, 4-hour work week as well. That's another tip.
I was going to say, I feel a little 4-hour work week up in here. But I'm curious because, like, at the end of the day, I'm a solo founder for Hospitality.fm, right? So I have a co-founder with my own management company. But I will say, solo foundership is really hard, especially when I hate to say it, it's somewhat siloing in the sense of you have a team. Yeah, I have a team of producers and editors and all the people that make it look and sound good, right, on the podcast. But I don't have the ability to call a partner and say, hey, like, this is what I'm thinking for the direction. This is the roadmap. What do you think about this? This is what I'm feeling today. Like, do you think this is viable? Do you think it's just in my head? Like, you don't have that real sounding board. So any advice for solo founders? Obviously, you're the integrator for Mike in STR Secrets and you have your own team. So I'm assuming you're going to say something around EOS, but what would any type of advice be for a solo founder who just does kind of get stuck?
Yeah. When I was building this, obviously I had Sierra. We were engaged at the time. And so I would run ideas by her. And I think that's really the starting point of all decisions I make is with her. So getting like on the stage with her on what our vision is and what the execution is, I think is my number one thing. And then from there, if you can find other people that have either done what you want to do or, have a mindset or somebody you admire that you can go help or, pick their brain, or you got a family member that's like grown a business and you can ask them questions. That's just like the fast track to success. They've already seen the problems. They've already seen, what's going to happen. So, masterminds are another great way. Coaching programs are another great way. Obviously, investing in your education. I've spent, well over $100,000 just in education. Mike probably triple that, into investing into traction, investing into, working with Steve Trover and his team for hiring, and just investing in different masterminds. And really just your education, I think, pays off way more than any real estate investment ever could. And it doesn't have to be paid either. You could work for somebody for free and just, hey, can you be my mentor? I'll help you out with some tasks. What do you need? And I'll go execute it for you. Local meetups. I mean, especially in short-term rentals, we have such an amazing host community. We're all bringing each other up. Events, conferences, podcast communities. There's just so many different tools, but the key is to take action with what you learn, right? You can consume all this information, but you have to take action on what you're actually going to do. And that's when, fear kind of will set in. And that's when you lean on those people who are close to you to help, pull you forward and pull you through. So surrounding yourself with the right people. And I'm a people person, so that gives me energy and it's easy for me. But for other people that aren't people persons, maybe tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I think the key is just surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I'm curious to know from you too. You talked about fear setting in, right? And I definitely fall victim to this. I'm not going to lie. I will admit where I know I struggle. And I think that's the fun part about podcasting and the medium of this, right? We get to have this conversation of vulnerability. And we have the intimacy of people having us in their ear. And I definitely struggle with fear in the sense of people are going to say no, they're not going to respond. I'm going to have to wait on them. When I do wait on them, I'm not going to get the answer that I want or was hoping for. Those thoughts definitely creep into my day to day. Any advice for founders and entrepreneurs, any business doesn't need to be short-term rentals, hospitality focused. I'm just thinking I know fear can be crippling. And I know, especially the more success I've gotten, especially after a lot of failure, the more success I've gotten, the less likely I want to hear no or want to have that. So the fear definitely builds as things get better and things like actually come into fruition. So love to know your advice for founders out there.
Yeah. Great question. I think it's getting back to the core of like, all right, why do I feel this way? Why is this, usually it's you're outside your comfort zone. And all right, if I'm outside my comfort zone, this is not making me easy, or what I see too often, and it happens to me all the time too, is I'm slow to make a decision, and that can really slow down the business. But if you have a lot of people working for you too, then they're like, all right, well, Mike hasn't made a decision in weeks. Like, what are we doing here? All right, I guess I'm going to be slow making decisions, and then everybody gets slow making decisions. So, just know that, better and done is better than, or good and done is better than perfect and undone. So being a business owner, it's a lot of just testing. You really don't know. You can get all this information from masterminds and podcasts, but you don't know if it's truly going to work. And so just knowing and having that awareness of like, all right, this is making me a little uneasy. I'm going to run it by, my mastermind. I'm going to run it by my coach. And then I'm just going to, it's in alignment with what I want to do. I'm just going to say yes and figure it out. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You're not going to die. And most likely, unless you're doing something crazy.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship. But that, you can still figure it out. You still got good people around you. If you feel good about, your ethics and you as a human being, jump, parachute will come.
Yeah. You're like, oh, you're not going to die. And then someone's like listening to this and like building a firework manufacturer. And they're like, oh, you never know.
Well, maybe.
Maybe one day. Well, we'll see how diverse the Slick Talk audience is in businesses. But would love to, I think this is great advice. And like, it's just interesting, right? I think this industry, you've said this before on our pre-chat, this industry for short-term rentals, hospitality specifically, is very small. It's a tight-knit community. No matter how big, like, yes, we know the numbers from Airbnb where there's like 8 million, 9 million hosts globally that they have on the platform. That's a lot. It's not a small number, especially if they're making 14% service fees on all of them. Obviously why they're a $100 billion company, but it is so small. When you go to all the conferences, you go to the STR Wealth, you go to Level Up Your Listings, the VRMAs, it's the same people. It's the same, there's very rarely new faces. When it comes to that, like, do you think, I would love to know your opinion basically on the sense of the attendance at conferences and the industry and the names that people keep seeing on podcasts and YouTube and Instagram. Do you think really this is maybe like, how do I phrase this in the sense of, is this the top of the industry? Is it just this is the most active in the industry? Where do you think that is? Why this is such a small community, but in such a global setting?
It's a good question. Obviously the last 3 years, I think there's 1.5 million listings in the United States right now, and 500,000 of them have been added in the last 3 years. That's a lot. So like there's like this just a massive amount of supply and massive amount of new hosts coming on. And, the education around it too has gone way up. When I was in 2019, when I was first starting like educating myself on real estate in general, it was like Bigger Pockets and like some multifamily educators out there that were on YouTube, Chad Carson and guys that I followed that were really good. So I think this industry is just going to continue to grow. I mean, I know short-term rentals is going to continue to grow. How big can it get? I'm not sure. I do think, Mike made a good point 2 years ago. Somebody asked him like, hey, this was on Clubhouse when Clubhouse was big. Remember in COVID?
Oh yeah.
Somebody asked him,
can't forget those days. Julie, Bill Faith, Mike, Dr. Rachel Noble, everybody we were all on that daily, multiple hours a day.
Yeah. And I was in there consuming.
I remember seeing you. We would be like, hey, what's up, doc?
Yeah. But the question was, where do you see the next few years going? And this was, I think, in 2021. And he said, I see the bigger property management groups getting kind of pushed out by the mom and pop, like smaller type of hosts. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, you see what's happening with Vacasa. I mean, they play a little bit different game than the property managers, like the company that you build as well. And they're after, shareholder success. But the attrition there it's happening left and right. Same thing with Evolve, a little bit way different business model, kind of on the other end of the spectrum. But I think the opportunity right now for, mom and pop type of like hosts that operate like you teach, on this podcast, and people come in and talk about, and their systems and softwares, like doing it the right way where guests are actually taken care of and they've got all the amenities that they need. I think the game is just being risen all around, and the tides are rising, and that's really good for the short-term rental community. And it's also good, we see the regulations coming out in all these different towns, but if we as hosts continue to raise our standards and raise our levels, then the cities are just they're gonna like thank us for it. I mean, you saw Airbnb, they paid what, like, I don't know, maybe $100 billion. I'm speaking, I shouldn't put a number, right?
Yeah.
And in hospitality tax, it's like, that's great for the city. So why would they shut that down, especially if there's standards across the board? So I'd love to see, and this is something that we may be working on in the future, but a certification for hosts of like, hey, this is the standard of standards that all hosts should have in place. And I think Airbnb should, work on that as well to make sure that, they're trying to get all the hosts possible, get on my platform, but all right, let's reset and like make some standards for everything.
All right, sorry to interrupt the episode, but we have to tell you about our partners at Hostfully and Hudson Creative Studio. If you don't know, Mike Riley and I were talking about building your team, building a company, actually working for yourself and not being in your W-2, and what that looks like in any type of journey for entrepreneurship in our space. But one of the things that comes with building a business is building a tech stack. And building a tech stack is super important because you need to diversify your portfolio, not just being on Airbnb and other platforms, but connecting to Vrbo, Homes and Villas by Marriott, Whimstay, you name it. There's other distribution channels for you. Building that tech stack to build your diversification across revenue streams from OTAs to marketplace items and other integrations for your business, basically. Just like Minute is a partner with us, they're actually integrated perfectly inside of Hostfully's marketplace. So you have one tech stack, one solution that can really connect and build out an ecosystem of support tools for you in order to have that financial freedom. Now, you're building a brand, you're building a company, you have employees, you have an operations manager, then you need to have a branded website. So Hudson Creative Studio not only does beautifully branded websites, but they have the booking engine that's beautifully built and directly integrates on our website, pulls our reservations into Hostfully that are from our direct marketing, and makes it so seamless in our integration with the two tools. So if you haven't already, if you're thinking about it, then you need to get with Hudson Creative Studio. Ellie, the founder, is amazing. He just really works really great with all of his clients. We are a client and a customer, Recreation and Vacation Rentals. You can check out our website to see an example of his work, or go to Hudson Creative Studio with the link in the show notes. Grab our special offers today, and we hope you're enjoying the rest of the episode. Thank you so much. And back to the episode with Mike Riley. In the early days, like the 2010s, 2011s, Airbnb actually had a how to host program, right? It was a whole education course on hosting and the best ways to set up a listing and to greet your guests. And this was especially during the time where a lot of the inventory was shared spaces, right? A spare bedroom, guest room, mother-in-law type suite area, all that stuff. But they've definitely gone away with that. And I'm curious, Mike, I'm glad you brought this up because the audience within Slick Talk I feel very lucky to be kind of split between the two, like traditional VRMA, old guard, management company, Vacasa's not really, but we actually have a lot of Vacasa listeners. And then to the point of like the new age, right? The new hosts that find Airbnb, they have a property, they get co-hosting, they have whatever, and that's how they form their hospitality business. I am very curious for the old guard. I hate calling them that. I'm sorry for anyone listening and gets offended by it, but like the traditional VRM who's been in 20, 10, 15 years, right? they see this and they're like, man, these guys are unprofessional. They only depend on Airbnb. They don't know how to diversify. They're not even in the cities they operate in for most parts. So then how can they truly know that their guests are being respectful and they're taking care of the properties and all this? There's all these devil advocates, right? What's your counter on that stuff? Like, I'm very curious because I've found like there's really not that much difference in the sense of one calls themselves a property manager or vacation rental manager. The other calls them a host. One calls the industry vacation rentals. The other one calls the industry Airbnb. But outside of that, a lot of them do have a tech stack or build outs. Like there's not really truly much difference outside of the norm. Maybe a couple of different things on the business model and housekeeping and other things. But that being said, I would love to know your thoughts on the overall kind of like different spectrums of the industry.
Yeah. No, I've talked to a lot of like traditional VRM, type of companies, and I agree with them. Like there needs to be standards across the board, and I know VRMA is doing a good job doing that as well. But just getting the word out there more. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just getting the word out there more and being more, accessible to that and the newer type of host. You know what I mean? And more open to the new type of host or management company, even because you could be a classic vacation rental management company, but if the people who are actually pushing the buttons and then talking to the guests, and if they're not doing their job well, if they're not being quality controlled, then that can be a big problem too. I mean, we've seen that with the companies that Vacasa has acquired. It's just kind of the quality control kind of slid by. And that's, that's where guys like me and companies like me are just, it's easy because they're like, hey, I don't have somebody to call. And it's like, well, you call me, and they're like, oh, okay, great. All right, well, let's sign up. Right. So, and I think just if combining arms more and probably, I do see, since we are in a recession and 2024 is going to continue to be in 2025. And I don't really see much changing over the next couple of years. I mean, interest rates can't come down to the rate that they were in 2020, 2021. I know there's a lot of people waiting for that. But if that happens and milk's going to be $14 a gallon and gas is going to be $20 a gallon, we just can't do that as an economy. So there's
going to be the
the
greatest country in the world. Like we can't destroy it because of that. Yeah.
No. So I do see you mentioned, the space is kind of at its peak, or is it at its peak? There's a lot of different softwares out there. There's a lot of different companies out there. I think it's going to get a lot smaller over the next couple of years. As far as, there's really not a whole lot of funding you can get right now. Now, raising money to go, like starting a fund for short-term rentals, that's been very successful. There's only a few people that have been doing it, but it's been very successful. I see that increasing more, but still raising money for that's tough. So it's going to be interesting to see how many more companies like TechFester and Stomp can continue to raise money and buy more properties. Because if that happens and there's more of them, then the game really changes.
100%.
It can be the quality control there, I think is good right now. But if there's more of them, it'll be really interesting in the next couple of years.
You brought up so many points. I want to talk about so many things, but I think one of my predictions this year on the earlier episode in January was literally the PropCo OpCo business style is going to probably be the future if done right. Obviously, there's a lot more in the sense of I'm not the big financial guy. I would say that anyone looking to start a PropCo OpCo, you need to hire someone who is dirty with the numbers in the sense of just only cares about data and numbers and how the math, right? Like you can't be a visionary and think like, I'm going to go start this fund and just be like, all right, we're fine. You've seen it and it's rough, but when done right, it is great. And I'm curious, did you ever see that clip when we had Mike Sjogren, Eric Moeller, Matt Landau, Steve Milo, and Amy Heino when Mike kind of got a little fiery?
Yeah, I remember he told me about it. I remember him telling me about it.
So for all the listeners, in post edit, we're going to put this clip here. It's gold. We're going to put this clip, listen to it, and you'll understand.
I'm going to speak very blunt and frank. If you want more new hosts to join VRMA, make them feel welcome. We weren't on this call for more than 10 minutes before you started shooting shots at the new hosts and the conference. Like, it's somebody mentioned it in the chat, and it's true. It feels like it's this us versus them thing, and it doesn't need to be. But it's like there's so many folks, traditional managers that have been in the game a long time, that are like, excuse my language, but fuck all these new people that are coming in here and trying to run these businesses and everything else. They're pieces of shit. They're only in it for short-term money. That's bullshit, man. That's just labeling and it's generalizing. So like, if you want people to feel welcome, make them feel welcome. Be like, hey, like, we'd love to have you guys. Here's what we're going to do to actually shake things up and make these events fun and like have some entertainment with some education, just like a little flair on it to attract that different demographic. Because I'm going to throw it out there. There's nothing wrong with somebody that wants to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties and get out of their job. I'll be honest, that was my goal. I was a CPA for 10 years. I got my MBA, all that bullshit. But I couldn't be there with my son when he was on oxygen in the hospital because I was tied to a desk trading time for money. And so I got into this business. I will tell you straight up, I got into this business to build a business for money. But in order to make money, you have to do a good job and create a good hospitality business. Otherwise, you're not going to make any money. It's that simple. And there's a lot of people that are stuck in jobs right now that they don't like, or they got laid off during COVID and they were looking for an opportunity and this opportunity came up. So those are the facts. I mean, the industry is shifted. It's a great opportunity for people. They're not going to last very long if they don't do it the right way. So that's what I'm trying to do, is help as many people as I can do it the right way. And we just speak the same language. So it's just a different demographic. But if we're going to come together, there has to be this like pitch and catch of like, yes, you guys have been in the game a long time. Like, show us some things and then maybe we can show you guys some things on how we've been doing it. And it's not like you guys don't know what the hell you're talking about. We don't know what the hell we're talking about. There's just this like divide of like, why does it have to be that way?
I think like, honestly, it was so well said. And even with the swearing, even with the, saying, shit and whatever, I think really what Mike said in the message, like the traditional VRMA community was never really welcoming to newer ideas, newer operations, newer tech stacks, and newer ways of doing things, right? I think COVID didn't just wake up the corporate world where people went remote and hybrid and X, Y, and Z, but really woke up the management world where like, I'm in Denver. I don't have one property in Denver that I manage. I have a hotel in Kentucky. I have properties in Washington. I have one in Florida and one in Canada. Like, we're super spread, which I'm not a big fan of, but I don't think you have to be on site anymore. And a lot of traditional VRMs don't like that. They don't like the thought of you can't be outside of the market. So I think the way Mike said it and the way you said it truly is like super crucial on like the way we welcome the new age, right? Like, I think I can't wait for the next generation to come in and really disrupt the way we're doing things now. Yeah. So I think it's going to be exciting. Any thoughts on like, when do you see us? Like, let's say you and me, right? You, me, Mike Sjogren, everyone that we're all in cahoots with. When do you see us becoming the old guard? When do you think that happens?
Interesting. I don't know. I haven't thought about that too much, to be honest. I mean, it almost feels like we are to a certain extent right now.
Yeah.
It's all relative to, I guess, who you're around and who you're surrounding yourself with. Mike's obviously got the hotels, and he kind of went from STR to, building his co-hosting, and then to the hotels, and, what's next? Hotels, you're raising some money, buying more really cool short-term rentals. So yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for you. I mean, it's all relative, but yeah, I know a lot of people are talking about like the boutique retreats and that sort of thing. I think that's really interesting and can really take off over the next couple of years. But it's going to be more for like the lower, not like the super, super nice ones. More of like, hey, this is a great retreat to go to. It's not going to be $1,000 a night, but it may be $200. But you're going to attract like the kind of the, the folks who are in high school or in college right now that really enjoy that experience because they're tied to this thing all the time, you know? And I think there is an appetite for kids that age to get off of that thing, you know?
Yeah.
And even my kids too. It's like, I see them on the screen too much. They're 2 and 1, you know? I can't imagine 10 and 11.
Spoken like a true dad. Spoken like a true dad. I love it. No, it's super interesting. I always kind of do wonder that, like, you know, there was a point where I was the new guy on the block, and then there was a point you were the new guy on the block, and now we've been in the industry 6, 8, 10 years, right? So it's, you know, it definitely gets to a point where I think there's still time. We're not old guard yet, thankfully, but it's definitely interesting. And you mentioned I want to go to this topic. I want to talk about tech stack for a second. In the sense of what you built in a tech stack, I would love to know, can you walk us through what that looks like for you? Because one thing I've seen, I came from the traditional hotel world, Marriott's, you know, a boutique hotel and all this other stuff. And I knew what a booking engine was and a PMS and these certain types of touch points within the tech ecosystem. And I know a lot of people that get into short-term rentals, they never have been exposed to that. They just know Airbnb. They just know X, Y, and Z. What does the tech stack look like for you? And how do you suggest when kind of bringing on a new student or even working with like a potential investor, et cetera? Like, how do you work with and kind of explain the tech ecosystem within your business?
Yeah, for sure. So I always tell people dominate Airbnb and Vrbo first. So you need a channel manager to be able to, you know, like our whole concept and what we teach is like, you're not trading your time for money, right? So you're not creating yourself another job. If you're just on Airbnb and you're just messaging everything and you're doing all the pricing yourself, like that's a job. Like it takes time. In order to do it right, it takes time, sending all the messages. So you need, you know, I use Hospitable for channel management and guest communications. I went from Hospitable to Guesty for Pros in 2021. And then I switched back to Hospitable because they just make it so easy. I've got 28 properties and I know people that have 200. I use PriceLabs for pricing, Hostfully for guest books, guidebooks. I still use Google Voice for my whole team. So we just use that to pick up the phone calls, to send text messages to our contractors. We use Slack for internal communications. Let's see. So I really say like dominate Airbnb and Vrbo first. And then once you collect those emails, collect those contact information, then you can go into creating a direct booking site and really retargeting your current guests. Because what I find too often is like people are paying $5,000 for a direct booking site after 2 months of being on Airbnb because they're not getting booked on Airbnb. So like, oh, I'll get a direct booking site and maybe I'll get booked. Nobody's going to find you. Nobody's going to find your direct booking site. Like that's just not going to happen. So keep it simple. Yeah. Use your direct booking site for your, you know, whatever your PMS is. And then really to wrap a bow on my tech stack is Monday.com. How I manage my team is, it's just all through Monday. I mean, Monday and Slack. We run 95% of our business through Monday. You know, all of our property goals. I don't have anything pretty. I don't use like metrics from Hospitable or anything like that. I'm old school. Yeah. I've got property goals per property per month, all in Monday. I can see if we're hitting it. I can see if we're low. So like, for instance, you know, in April, I'm already 78% to goal for my company. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right, what levers can I pull? Sending emails, doing a Facebook ad, you know, adding nights before or after to hit that 100% goal. And I think, you know, there's just so many things to think about at different levels, but keep it simple at first, then expand your reach. And then you can get into more sophisticated things like Monday to help grow your team. Yeah.
On Good Morning Hospitality, we covered that the OTAs combined, like the big ones, Vrbo / Expedia, Airbnb, Hotels.com, Booking, them. Those core groups are going to spend a total of probably more than $18 billion in advertising and marketing this year. Compared to last year, it was $16 billion with a B. So they're adding an extra $2 billion on top of their spend. Book Direct is great. Mark Simpson, I know, would hate if I didn't say that. So of course, Book Direct is great, but you know, you are getting buried in the search, and you really do need to focus on in property marketing in order to grab those emails, because I think that's where everyone's leaving the lowest fruit, right? Like it's so low hanging and no one does it, right? So, yeah, really interesting.
I'm curious. Did you see? I think Vrbo's starting to test out like sponsored listings. Did you see that?
Yeah, so we actually broke the news yesterday on the time of this recording for everyone knowing it's April 9th today. On April 8th on GMH, we got a leak that they were doing sponsored listing. Then we called Vrbo, and now they're getting in front of it with their PR. So we may have heard that. Yeah, sponsored listings is going to be interesting.
That's really, and Airbnb is going to do the same thing eventually.
They've already been. They're already pushing that, right? I think we've all seen it with the algorithm changes, the way that they're creating like the top percent badges, top 1%, X, Y, and Z. That's just, they're honestly, in my opinion, this is completely unplanned or unscheduled, but I think they're doing an Apple right now, and they're walking you up the ladder in the sense of just like when you go buy an iPad for $399, you have to then upgrade the storage, right? And then it's like $499. And then that same $499 iPad that you're about to buy is the same as the iPad Air. So might as well just buy the iPad Air, but then you still got to upgrade the storage. And that storage now is like an iPad Pro. So why not just get that one? Like they're just walking you up to sponsored listing. That's really how it's going right now.
One more thing to that. So we go to Healdsburg, which is just north of San Francisco. It's like near Napa Valley in California. And you fly into San Francisco and you drive, it's about an hour and a half. And right as I was going through San Francisco, there was a billboard for Airbnb. And I'm trying to remember exactly what was on the billboard, but it was something as simple as like, Will loves Mike's listing. And to me, I was like, that's really interesting. I'm not sure what that's about. Then I'm like, Airbnb could be a social platform where you can, share pictures, it could be an Instagram, like where people go, not only to book places, but also to share, hey, I'm here, and share, look at this place, and really just make it a social platform as well. I think I don't know if they were foreshadowing that in the billboard, but that could be really, really interesting in the future.
Do you remember the time, I forget what interview Brian was on, but it was basically, I think it was right before they acquired the Game Planner AI company for like $200 million. And Brian was talking about the next, cause I was during one of the summer releases, and he was talking about the implication of AI. There's a whole bunch of open AI stuff happening at that time too. And Brian was talking about Airbnb is not a travel app. It's going to be a matchmaking app, basically.
Yeah.
Where they're going to use AI to get you to find the perfect property, the perfect dates, and the perfect location with the perfect host. And I think what you just said is dead on the money. I think they're going to shift pretty quickly. And from what I hear, this next summer release is going to be pretty insane. I've gotten some little whispers, but it's, I don't disagree with you. I think it could shift into the next vertical. They're already trying to become a PMS with lock integrations and other things like that. I think the next piece is retention on the app, right? Like how long? Like that's what social media companies have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How long? How many times can you open up that app? How long are you going to be on that app? Absolutely. Like how many eyeballs can we get? Mm-hmm. That's the game. Mm-hmm. That's the game that all those big tech companies are playing.
Yeah. Do you think this is how likely? What would you give this likelihood of chance, right? For this pivot, do you give it a 80%, 90%? Where do you think you land on that?
And after seeing that billboard, I'm like, that's the best idea they've ever had. I mean, the air mattress thing was cool, but
yeah,
it's bound to happen. Yeah, it's bound to happen. I'd say 100% that they're gonna be more social in the future.
You heard it here first, everybody. This is
exactly.
I actually haven't had a conversation like this on the pod in a while, so super interesting. I love that perspective, Mike. I know we've talked, from leaving your W-2 to hiring your first employee. I would love to know what's next for you specifically. I know you're a part of STR Secrets. You have your own portfolio, your own team. You got a lot going on. You're growing a family. You're playing all the roles, wearing all the hats. But what's next? Where do you think, like outside Airbnb becoming a social media platform, what's up for you in the next year or two? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah. Definitely this summer, spending more time with the family and the kids. So they're 1 and 2 now. I just moved into a new house, which is right on the river. I need to get a boat eventually. So that's what's on the horizon for me right now. As far as business goes, continue to grow my business here. I think I live in New Bern, North Carolina. So the beach is about 30 minutes from me. And it's a very untapped market in my opinion. So going and helping some more people in that area and expanding my business outside of where I live in the mountains. And then with STR Secrets, I mean, I feel like it's not work. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but I just love helping people. And especially people that were in my shoes as well, that, either are not in a great situation, at work, or, maybe their spouse isn't. And so my goal is to help 1,000 people this year, leave their W-2s. And right now I think we got about 450 people that we've helped. So we're over halfway there. And just, teach how to grow your business the right way without trading time for money, without trading your soul, and just grow either by buying property or by managing property for other people. So those are my 3 goals I got for this year.
I'm all in on that boat idea. And I'm also all in on the W-2 quit your job goal. But I also love the boat idea. I'm a little landlocked here in Denver, so I do appreciate a good boating outing. Like one question I've been wanting to ask all my new guests recently on the pod. We're in Q2 2024, and I'm getting ideas and bugs on like what should I do with the podcast. And one thing I want to throw at you is, if I were to create a book with all the lessons learned from my guests on the show, what would your title be if I had to do a title on you or a chapter on you and the lessons learned with your story?
Mike and I talk about this a lot. I think how to live your perfect week. And I didn't touch on it too much here on this podcast, but what I worked so hard while I was working at Google to create was just regain control of my calendar. And doing that in all phases of life. And kind of my phase was tennis was like all I did. And then, work was kind of really all I did. And then, I was able to have that realization of, man, I only have so much time here. I can never get more time. I can never get any time back. So how do I want to live my week? And so structuring your weeks where Mondays don't feel like Mondays, and every day feels like Friday, and just following your passion to doing things that you really love to do. And so that's what I would say is how to live and create your perfect week.
I love that you picked week and not life or day, or I think week is intentionally a specific time frame. I love planning my week. I look forward to Mondays. I look forward to these. So I think the week time frame is actually kind of perfect. I love that. Super awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that for this episode. We're going to title this episode, How to Plan Your Perfect Week. So there we go. That's the new title. Maybe, hopefully we'll rank it and see how it searches on Apple and Spotify first, but all the stuff. No, seriously, Mike, this has been super eye-opening, exciting. I truly love the medium of podcasting because we get to talk to the people we want to talk to about the things that we want to talk about. And I love your story. I'm mad at myself for not getting you on sooner, to be honest, but I think also is great timing. Like the conversation, I'm going to walk away with a lot of energy from this. So I really appreciate you taking the time to share with the listeners, to do what you're doing in the industry. Seriously, I really admire people who truly want to see people succeed and not just benefit themselves. So love what you're doing and just super appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'd love to be on more podcasts too. So if any listeners have podcasts that want to hang out and chat for a while, hit me up. Instagram, Facebook, Mike Riley.
You got it. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And if you're a hospitality.fm podcaster and you're like, dang, I need to get Mike on the show, that's 100% correct. You do, because I'm going to make sure that this episode sets the standard. If you're an HFM podcaster, try to beat this episode. I dare you. Let's go. Just kidding. It's a little competition in me, but For all the Slick Talkers out there, seriously, like and subscribe. All things Mike Riley. Everything's going to be in the show notes. We're going to make sure that we have all the plugs there. And you know what to do. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys all again next week. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Will Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.